Welcome everyone to the first edition of the podcast. We don't necessarily have a name on that name yet, but we are working on that, and we are joined by the fantastic Sara Eastwood. So thank you so much for being our first guest. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. Thank you very much. So ready to go.
Yeah, fantastic. It's good to hear. So obviously we actually haven't spoken before. We've exchanged maybe a few emails, which is quite a nice kind of fresh look on things. So quite a nice place to start, I guess, would be to where are you kind of now in your career, and how did you kind of get into development, alumni relations from the beginning, really? That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, okay. So I guess I kind of fell into getting into alumni relations, but from a service marketing background. I had worked previously in some big kind of service companies like Capgemini and Royal Mail. Then obviously got married, had 3 children, sort of had a bit of a break in the career, and was looking for flexible work. So on the suggestion of my husband, actually, contacted the school where I did my A-levels myself, explained my background, said that I needed some really flexible work, and as it happened, they were just starting to see the value in the alumni network, and wanted somebody to help manage that. So I was able to sort of get a really flexible role at it was at Concord College, and then I was there for 6 years, just helping them grow their alumni network. And I have actually recently just left for no other reason than the fact that I was there for 6 years and just want to spend a bit more time with my family and do a bit of freelancing work. But it was a fantastic 6 years, and I'm really excited about working in the school space. Actually, I love it.
And you said at the beginning that they brought you in because they saw the value of a good alumni relations program. What kind of things were they kind of hoping that you'd bring in or kind of achieve out of your time there?
Do you know what? I was really, really lucky because previously the role had been I say passed around people. It wasn't even passed around people. There was no role. Alumni relations was just something that was kind of tagged onto the end of everybody else's role, and something that they did as and when they had time to. Which, if anybody who works in a school knows, that everybody is so busy, so it kind of just kept falling off the bottom of everyone's list. And I do remember when I went in for my interview with Vanessa Hawkins, who is the head of marketing there, and she said, we've been looking to do this, and we've been sort of dabbling in bits and pieces, but we realised that we need to have somebody dedicated to that role, that it's their responsibility and they're accountable for it, as opposed to us that are doing other roles within the school. It's always on the periphery of their role. So I just timed it just right, and was so grateful to Concord, because I was able to have a flexible role where I could work a little bit from home, work in the office, and do that around the children.
Sure. And did you find that when you first started, obviously you mentioned that you were working with the kind of head of marketing, but also obviously you probably got influence from the headmaster or headmistress, or it is. Did you find that when you got there, they were asking kind of different things from the program? So the headmaster might be asking for more of a financial input, whereas your head of marketing might be looking for something that obviously they can advertise to school in terms of an alumni network kind of thing. Do you kind of feel like you're being kind of pulled in different ways, I guess?
I'll be honest with you. Not really, because it was such a new role for the school. So there was nothing. I mean, they were using a different kind of website portal, but it was not really used very much. I mean, I do remember looking. I think we were getting something like 2 logins a year, wow. And so whilst we had quite an engaged alumni group, I think there was an email database of about 3,000 emails. There wasn't much communication going out to them. I believe there was just a party that they did once every 5 years, and a few kind of sort of newslettery communications once a year, and that was really about all that was being done. So for me, I was walking into a very really clean slate, which was fantastic. And interestingly, coming from a corporate background, working in a school, and I don't know if this is true of all schools, but the school I was at, they were just fantastic in having a very open mind and trusting that I was going to do the best job I could. So to give you an example on that, when I was looking at changing the alumni portal that we were going to be using, the website and CRM system, I obviously researched lots of different companies to go with. And, I was about to write this huge kind of document and put together a business case and all that. But, I had a meeting with the head and the head of marketing, and they were like, Sarah, we trust you to do what you think is right. You're the one that's going to be using the system. You're the one that is managing the alumni network. So as long as you can tell us and reassure us that it's the right thing, then just go for it. And that was mind-blowing for me, and it was it filled me with a lot of confidence actually as well, because I hadn't previously been in the alumni development area at all. I was, as I said, I was in service marketing, but I was having to transfer those skills into a completely new industry sector. So that was fantastic. So I don't know whether that's usual or not, but for me, I was very lucky that I had some very, very open-minded, fantastic people I was working with.
I mean, it sounds definitely like the right way to go, because it seems like it kind of galvanized you, especially at the beginning, showing that they had such confidence in you. But I think that that's probably not the case for most schools, because obviously there is quite a lot of focus on it in terms of maybe when you're selecting things, maybe the bursar is going to have quite a big influence and things like that. So I think it sounds like you're onto a bit of a winner there, so that's good to hear. And so since you left Concord, you mentioned that you're doing some kind of consultancy. Is that what the plan is now?
Yes, I'm just keeping an open mind at the moment. I've always been on LinkedIn, but yeah, just doing a bit, little bits here and there for a few local schools and whatever. So we've just obviously come back out of lockdown, so everything's all a bit kind of, got the kids back in school, so we're just settling in with that really before I look at what next.
I think you're right. I think in the next kind of obviously next couple of weeks, all the staff and the schools will be coming back, so hopefully we'll get some kind of air of normality coming back to the industry in general. So in terms of I guess when you were at Concord, maybe towards the end, because obviously I think you said you finished in March, but what kind of were the main challenges that you were facing on a day-to-day basis really in your role as alumni relations and development?
Well, we I said I was at the school for 6 years. After the first year, I chose a new CRM website system, which was the Truth and Tech system. And I guess the challenges, really, I think possibly a lot of people find this, but I think the challenges for using any kind of engagement community system is having a whole school approach. One of my frustrations, I guess, is that I was using a system that gave me the world in terms of being able to manage the relationships with our individual alumni, but there were so many parts to that system that in a short time, I was working 2 to 3 days a week, school hours, but even if I'd been working full time, it would have been difficult to have used all of those functionalities. So to give you an example, the system has a fantastic fundraising section to it where you can track who's donating money, you can use a pipeline and all that kind of things, which I in my day-to-day role didn't really have time to explore to the full extent. I went to finance and said, this is a great system. You should be using this. Because they were kind of providing me with details on a spreadsheet. I was then having to input it into the system. And it kind of felt like we were inputting it in two different areas. But of course, when you're in a school, every department uses the systems that they're using. And to try and get that integrated approach is a big challenge, I think. Another one is we have on the system a mentor kind of facility where really great at being able to identify people working in different industry sectors that may be able to offer maybe work experience to our sixth formers. Again, as the role of the alumni officer, and I was a one lady show kind of thing. There was nobody else within my alumni relationship kind of team. There was only me. I just didn't have the time or the resources to be able to really make use of that. We have a careers lady. She is absolutely fantastic. Using her own systems and her own kind of ways. I mean, she was quite new into her role as well, bless her. And that I felt that was a challenge. And I think a lot of schools find that is, how do you just to go back on that, I do think in the past, community systems, CRM systems have come on leaps and bounds, in the past few years. And I truly believe that Tucan are leading the way in that. I mean, I've been to quite a few presentations with other people, but the system is able to do so much. And I don't think schools realise its capability. And that's a challenge, I think. If I was able to set up a school from scratch and bring in a system like that, and then get all the departments using the bits, in terms of managing relationships, it would be fantastic. But I think it's a challenge for the industry sector.
Great. So just on what you were saying with the mentoring, I think that I agree. The whole idea of mentoring and allowing your alumni to give back is such a powerful thing, and also allowing people to give back in a way that isn't financial, because especially those new leavers from school might not be in a position to do that. So obviously I think it's a really powerful thing. But obviously you mentioned that you work with the head of careers there, but also was there kind of an element of you working maybe with the head of sixth form as well, to help with that bridge between obviously the sixth formers and the alumni who wanted to help out? So how did that kind of relationship work?
I'll be honest with you, I didn't do enough of that. And again, it was because I was time short. And I think, again, this is a challenge of many, not in the bigger schools, actually. Interestingly, when I go to the IDPE conference, we used to go every year. It's incredible, actually, the size of some of the departments running development and alumni in some of these big schools, but you have to remember where I was working, we had one lady doing all of the marketing for the school, plus 2 or 3 other roles within the school. Myself 2 or 3 days a week, only term time only. And one other sort of gentleman that was full time, but helping myself and the head of marketing as well. So I can't remember what the question was now, but in terms of liaising with other people within the school, I am guilty of not doing enough of that, because it was enough just doing what I was doing.
It's a time thing.
But you mentioned about enabling what I think you're saying about getting our alumni to give back. That is one thing that I am very, very passionate about, in terms of I believe, well, when I first went into my role at Concord, I realised that actually it was quite a privilege to do a role where you personally have so much affinity to. So, as an alumni officer, every alumni officer, I'm sure, in the country is part of their own community. So they they know what it feels like to be at the customer end, as it were,
Exactly.
of communications. And, I looked at my experiences of what I was receiving from my old school, not Concord, when I was there before, and what I was receiving from my university. And I realised that, I'm 40, well, at the time I was a bit younger, I'm 48 now, but I was in my early 40s, busy person, 3 children, trying to run a family, have a career, have a job, manage, be with my husband, have a social life. And, the magazine I used to get from my university that came through, I think it's every twice a year, really, I didn't have time to look at it. And, I might flick through it, but it didn't resonate with me. I couldn't quickly find something that was relevant to me. And that's what I basically, I think it's where I sort of changed things a little bit around with the Concord Alumni Network, in the sense that I realized that I had to make the network relevant. So that just changed the way we did our communications. For example, I mean, we're an international school, so we didn't hold many events, but we did, they were sending out a newsletter 2 or 3 times a year. But I realized that a newsletter, again, wasn't necessarily wasn't targeted. I mean, we're taught in marketing, target. And I didn't feel that just because a person came through our school, that was targeted enough. I felt we had to split those people up. So I started doing relevant communications, which just basically meant if I wrote a story about somebody, I only sent that story to people by email, to people that were in the school the same time as them.
Yeah, it would actually be relevant too, right? If they knew the teacher or the building or whatever that was actually involved in the story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I still put it on the website. So if somebody happened to go on the website, they could still find that story and read it if they chose to. But I only sent it to the people where it was relevant. And that was all about building up trust. And it was really interesting over the 6 years that I was there, that you could see that trust building up just in terms of the amount of responses we got to those stories when they sent them out, some comments on the stories. First couple of years, no comments at all. Because if people can read the story, click through from their email, log into the site, read the full story on the site, and then they can comment or whatever. And yeah, as I said, by sending those relevant emails out, people started to trust that the email that came through was relevant to them.
And that takes a bit of time, because obviously you're going from a journey you're trying to take someone from, I've just got another notification from the school, to actually this school knows exactly what I want to read and the kind of content I'm going to be interested in. So then after time, they automatically want to engage without even knowing what it is. Because as you say, you kind of built up that trust, but it takes a bit of time, right?
Well, so for example, I mean, I always give this to somebody, and I say, you get an email from your old school and it says Easter newsletter 2020, and you're kind of like, right. If you had an email that said, remember John ? Or whoever, remember John ? Have a look what he's doing now. He was at school in the same, and he put the years he was at school, and then instantly you're like, oh, that was the year I was at the school.
Well, I might know that guy.
I remember a few Johns, not quite sure which John it was, and then you click through, and you're basically dangling a carrot, I always say, to get people to click through, log in, read more. Once they're on your site, that's when they are more likely to start exploring it and looking what else you have to offer.
But it's just a trigger. It's that initial trigger point of being like, oh, actually, I'm really interested in that. And that's what people are interested in, things that are kind of familiar to them, right? So it's going to be things that people that are at school, things that happen. That's really interesting. So go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, we did something similar actually this last year. It was our big 70th birthday at Concord. And again, I put myself in the shoes of the alumni, which I was at the school myself, so that wasn't hard to do. And we did have an event at the school. And obviously, it's an international school, very difficult to get people to fly all the way to the UK just for an event. But I kind of thought to myself, if the event was in Australia, if I got an email through saying, come to our 70th birthday celebration, would I go? And the answer is absolutely no, because I'll be thinking, well, I'm not going to know anybody there. It's 70 years, you know, what's the chance of somebody from my class being there?
Yeah.
So I was, what I did was, rather selfishly, I decided to secretly make the 70th birthday reunion a reunion for my year groups at Concord.
Yeah.
So I set up, on the system, on the Tucum system that we use, we set up a club, and I just called it the, I was there 1988 to 1990, I did my A-levels there. So I did it a little bit wider than that. I did it, I think, from 1986 to 1992. I then emailed everybody in those year groups that was in the school then, and said, hi, some of you might remember me. I was Sarah Jones back then. I was at Concord 1988 to 1990. You know, I now, you know, I mean, obviously this was about me, so I now run the network, but I didn't need to put that. And I said, you know, I've set up this little club. If you are vaguely thinking about going to this reunion, why don't you join the club? Then we can see who might be going. It might encourage more of us to go, and then we can make it like a 98.
If it's worthwhile actually going. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it worked really well. We ended up at that reunion. Normally, it's all the sort of the, I call them the old boys, bless them. But normally it's the sort of the 60 plus age group. And you know, I can't remember what the figures are, but put it this way, there are at least 2 tables of around my year groups there, so 20 odd people. Yeah. And you know, I sat on a table, I had the time of my life, and the people sat around me were just like, you know, we wouldn't have come if it wasn't for that, we'd have that personal email from you. So you know, if we do another reunion, which obviously not possible at the moment, or you know, I was saying that we should do this, but we should find individual people that we can send an email from them personally saying, I'm definitely going, why don't you come? So again, I know I'm witching on a bit here, but once we had our first 10 acceptances to that reunion, I contacted all of those 10 people and I said, can I send an email out on your behalf telling people that you're going? Yeah. And so again, we did it that way. And again, it's all about making it relevant. We made that reunion relevant to the people coming.
So it's about, when you're doing your annual end of year old boys or alumni dinner, it's about kind of highlighting the specific year groups, and then also actually, if you can, get emails from people in that year group doing the invites kind of on your behalf, because it carries a lot more kind of process going from there.
Yeah, and it's also, I do also think that you have to be a little bit, I mean, I do always say to people, I'm not a strategist at all. I kind of fly by the seat of my pants most of the time, and I'm just ideas and whatever, but I do think, you know, again, when we did that reunion last year, you have to be a little bit kind of, you have to think to yourself, you know, what I certainly thought to myself, why are we doing this reunion? You know, are we just doing it to be nice? And yes, to a certain extent we are, but ultimately that reunion and that expense that the school, or I don't say expense, I say investment the school made in that reunion was about inviting those people to come so that they felt that we were giving them some kind of value. So we deliberately, for that reunion, targeted the 30s, late 30s, early 40s, late 40s groups of people who don't traditionally come to reunions because busy people, busy life, busy whatever. Because ultimately those are our future old boys. So, I mean, I don't know what it's like in most school, but we certainly have a group of the older generation who are very, very, very engaged with the school.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are our biggest donors and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, we need to be building the relationships with the people that are growing their careers as we speak. Because they are going to be the people who are going to give back. And again, I'm a big believer that if we can give those people relevant communications and we can make the network useful to them. And when I say useful, I think it's about enabling connections and enabling them to grow their careers and their businesses and their social lives through the connections that we can give them. And if we can do that when they're in their 30s and 40s and 50s, by the time they get to their 60s, they're going to naturally want to give back.
Exactly. But it's the idea of, you have to think a little bit more long term, isn't it? Kind of, you can't just be like, oh, just drop into a certain age group and expect them to give. It is one of those things that even from as soon as they become an alumni, it's a very long process of how you treat and communicate with those different kind of segments of your alumni. Because obviously you're going to speak to your much older alumni very differently to your recent graduates, right? So it's about having a long-term plan for kind of different sections of your alumni base.
Well, I mean, again, it's, talking about recent graduates, again, we used to have a party every 2 years where we invited recent leavers. So basically all the people that were roughly at at university. So it was sort of up to 5 years of leaving Concord. So because we had it every 2 years, they would ultimately be invited to 2 reunions. But previously we used to just send out the invite to everybody that we had an email address for, whether they were a member of the community site or not, and invite them to come. Now, ultimately, that's being very nice. And I felt, and I'm sorry, I'm probably a bit mean, but I felt, if we're going to be spending money on these people that have left the school, and we need to have something back for them. So about four years ago, we started a thing where we only invited them to the party and let them come to the party if they were a member of our community, and that was their payback.
That seems a fair enough deal. It seems like a fair enough deal.
Yeah, I was like, what's the point in having somebody come who's not prepared to give us their email address so that we can communicate with them and build a relationship with them? That party is about building relationships. And if they don't want a relationship, that's absolutely fine. It's not a problem. But I'm not going to spend my 40, 50, 60 pounds or whatever it costs for that individual to be there if they're not prepared to start that relationship. And I think sometimes we're guilty of not being a bit hard like that in alumni relationships. We could sometimes be a bit sort of nice. It
is a very nice kind of friendly thing, which is great on one hand, but
I don't think I'm completely cutthroat or whatever, but I'm just saying, I think we've got to sometimes think, I'm here for a reason. My school has invested in me to deliver something. Now, I don't think that's a short-term win. I mean, ultimately, my goal for my alumni network was basically to apply the 80-20 rule, and in 20 years' time, have 20% of my alumni network so engaged with us, so grateful is probably not the right word, but so happy with the connections that we have helped them to enable to grow their careers and businesses, etc., that they want to give back. And that was my goal really for the network. And to bring that back a bit, I think initially when I started that role, I thought I could be everything to everybody. And you can't be that, and you can't be that in any job. And the past couple of years, I've been looking at really, trying to make the network useful to people. And I started to sort of like find, I realized I could find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. And if I could help them to grow their business, their fledgling businesses. So I started looking at startups, people that were new into business. If I could help that individual make connections and potentially grow their business through those connections, when I turn around to them in 10 years' time and just say, oh, do you remember I introduced you to Joe Bloggs, who then managed to get you a client, and that client then got you another client? I don't suppose you fancy sort of giving a little bit towards our Anthony Morris Foundation, do you? And it becomes a no-brainer, because it's just like, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, but that's the fundamental, isn't it? And when I speak to most alumni relations professionals, the reason why they get into it, right, is because they like building relationships between people.
Yeah,
That's for them the best part of the job. It's what they're good at. They're people persons. They don't want to be spending time on the admin side of things. They want to be doing
yeah,
exactly what you've just said, which is helping alumni meet other alumni, and they're being mutually beneficial. And then it all brings back around to that whole kind of community
yeah,
feel. So that's pretty much spot on.
yeah.
But we have nattered way over time.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. No, it's fine. I've really enjoyed it. But I will call it to a close there. But Sarah, thank you so much for your time. It was
No,
the
that's
first time
great.
I've done something like this, so thank you very much.
Well,
I'm
lovely
sure, I'm
to see
sure,
you, and
I'm sure we'll
I hope
speak
it's
very
been
soon.
helpful.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem at all. All right, cheers, Sarah. Bye.
bye.